Sound Corporation. And Dr. Heil is the expert when it comes to talking about speech and what we can do with improving QSOs with better quality speech. Dr. Heil, please take it away, sir. Okay, put them up.
Gonna get this baby unmuted. There we go. Hi, everybody. I hope you're hearing me okay. Everything all right?
Yeah, we better hear you okay, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what we got to do. All right. Thank you. And boy, do I agree with that. Transmission line is so important, and a lot of people just kind of fluff it off. Piece of coax is a piece of coax, but it's not really. So congrats on warming up some of our knowledge about that. That's great. Well, there's so many things that I get into on these. I think this is number 336 of these, and most of them are an hour, some are 2 hours that I've done since 2020 February. Because once I get into it, you guys won't let me go, but we'll keep this down to an hour a little bit after. But you'll find out why, because we're going to talk about things that you hear about, but they're not explained very well, and we're going to try to make your signals better. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to let you know where I came from. I started this great hobby in '56, but in 1952, my parents bought me a Hammond B3 organ. That was a very expensive thing, and they were not rich people, but my mother thought I needed that. I'd been playing accordion, and 2 years later, I become a professional, making $50 a weekend in 1954, playing in a restaurant locally. And from there, it got really crazy. In '56, I became the assistant at the Fox Theater in St. Louis. Now, why I take time to tell you this, that what you're looking at is how Bob Heil learned to listen. Listening is very important. And I did that because that organ hadn't been played in 20 years. And the organist there needed help. There are 3,500 pipes in that organ. Here's just a couple of hundred. And these are 1 inch out to 32 foot. That's where I learned to listen. Listening is so important because you have to get into not just hearing. Everybody hears. That's a physical process. Listening is a mental process, hearing all of the harmonics and the many things that happen with audio. And as a 15-year-old kid, I really dove into that. Also was traveling around the country playing theater organs all over the country. The most prestigious was this. That was the Paramount Theater in Times Square that's now the Hard Rock Hotel. And that had exactly the same organ as the Fox here in St. Louis. There were 4 of them that had the same instruments. But, you know, what does this have to do with ham radio? It's where I learned to listen, and we're going to really get into that. I'll take a couple of minutes more. One day, I had quit playing at the Fox. I had got some other jobs that I was playing around the country, but the Fox called me, and it was about 50 miles away from my hometown, and said, "Hey, we're throwing out some of our speakers. Would you like to have them? You seem like a gadget guy." And so I go up, and what are they doing? They're throwing out these Olsen bins. On the right, there's 2 of them there. There were 4 of them that I got. Those were 16-foot folded horns built by a Western Electric. And I just started playing with them. I got some Altex there to the left. Those are A4s. These are all monstrous speakers. But I built a PA from all of that. We started a plant and building amplifiers, not just an amplifier. These were 400-watt amps, but they were modular, the only modular high-powered amplifier ever. If a group went out and something got blown up in one of their amps, they went home. No, it came with a parts kit. Pull that out, take a forced cruise loose, and the next thing you know, you're back on the air. That was a very significant move in the late 60s into the 70s. But we were doing all kinds of things. My first major concert was in 1968 was Jimi Hendrix with Janis Joplin opening. And I thought, what did I get myself into? Well, it really grew. We became the predominant sound reinforcement company in the country. The Who summoned me. I lived with them for 4 years. I was on the road with them for 6. And just great things. And we just lost one of our great artists here recently, was Jeff Beck. He wanted a very special system that they could get in and out of the arenas quickly, and we did that. But Jeff was a great guy. Along with all that, I met up with Joe Walsh, and we with the James Gang, and we discovered we were hams. But we needed to build a talk box thing. I didn't even know exactly what he was talking about, but he had a song that he recorded called Rocky Mountain Way. He recorded that in a studio in Nashville. Bill and Dottie West were good friends of his, and they had this little speaker, a little 3-inch speaker and a funnel and a little bitty hose. And that's what he used to record that. Well, that's fine in a studio where it's so quiet and everything's good. What do you do in an arena? And so we were putting his new band Barnstorm together in our plant. We did that. We built a lot of systems together, and Humble Pie and numerous others. And so, hey, what do? I built a high-powered talk box, 100-watt driver. Had my fiberglass shop build me a little case for it. Away we went. And so Joe could do this live. However, Peter Frampton's little girlfriend, Penny, she called me one day and she says, look, I need a Christmas present for Peter. Don't send me a guitar. He's got a lot of them. So, of course, I sent her a talk box. And if you know anything about Peter Frampton, you know what made his career. And he tells that in all of his interviews. He gives me great credit because it was the talk box that really launched him into the #1 arena act for many years. But one day I get a call. I got a call from Paul Klipsch. I'm going. He said, that you, Heil? And I said, yes, sir. I'm going, this is God on the other end of this phone. What can I do for you, sir? He said, you the guys got that kilowatt sound system? Yes, I am. I want to come and see it. Paul Klipsch was an efficiency nut. He could take 1 watt and do 110 dB with the speakers. It was totally amazing. And here he was standing in front of me in my place in Marissa, Illinois, 50 miles south of St. Louis. I couldn't believe that he came, but he wanted to see this kilowatt system. Well, it wasn't 1, it was 6. He was freaked out. And all day long, he was telling I, well, why did you do that? Well, where'd you learn to do that? What college? I didn't go to college. Well, where do you learn it? What, high school? I barely made it out of high school. I really did. My grades were D's and F. I guess they felt sorry for me, but I was making more money than my teachers. I did not have to have all this nonsense because I was out playing the theater organ, making things happen on one of those. And so away we went, got in his airplane, flew to Hope, Arkansas that night. And he's still, well, where did you learn it all? I said, I learned it from ham radio. No, like what really guided you? Ham radio, because I was a building nut, and my first ham radio station was pretty meager. Bought that in 1956, the same year I became the organist, because Walter Ash was right across and down the street from the Fox, and that Harvey Wells and all of that, that was amazing. But I was on 6 meters. I was there for 17 years. Why? Because the bands were open all the time. And when I tell people that, and they weren't around in those days, they look at me like I'm making this up. No, the largest sunspot cycle ever. And so it was totally amazing. I'd come home from playing the shows at the Fox or the restaurants I was doing 11, 12 o'clock, and the bands were wide open. It was so much fun. And that Harvey Wells really worked well. I still have it. My Harvey Wells is an amazing little box, and got it. It still is on one of the other consoles here. But I just love building and doing things, and that was one of the things that turned me into doing things like this. Well, Paul was very amazed at some of the things I had done. So we're in here. We go back to Hope. Spent a couple days. That's an old telephone exchange building that he ended up with, and that was his lab. And in that lab, he had all kinds of his experiments. That's one of his K-horns. He made it out of plexiglass. He had to build a special saw to make one of the angles, because some of the angles were pretty crazy. And so what did he do? He built in a plexiglass to show everybody. Now, a K-horn, if you never experienced, notice I didn't say here. I said experienced a K-horn. It was made like so, and it fit in the corner of a room. The last 16 foot was your wall, this way and this way. You had to have 2 8-footers, and your speaker became part of the room. That's what I said. If you ever experienced a K-horn, you won't believe it. It would do 16 cycles like nothing with just a couple of watts. So efficient. But he taught me a lot of stuff. He said, Heil, you need to know some things. And he started in. The first thing he did is he gave me this book, the Audio Encyclopedia. And it's with me every day. It's amazing how much I turn to it. It's 1,750 pages of whatever you want to know about audio. And it's how Bob Heil really got my feet wet in the very beginning of building the sound systems, and later into making the ham radio sound a little better. But he said, Heil, we got to do something. And we were several days, he'd bring up all kinds of things. And he said, you need to know about the bell system. He said, you know, when the early telephone systems were put into use, they were just building it. It didn't work. They were mushy. They had no clear speech articulation. What had happened was they started in New Jersey at Bell. Every 500 miles across America was a relay station to keep the voltage and the audio up. When they got out to the West Coast and they picked up the phone for the first time, this is what they heard. Okay, what happened here? I don't know. They couldn't figure it out because everything looked okay. What's the problem? What happened to the speech articulation? It's gone. It's not what come out of our mouth. Why? So they had all these questions. Let me bring that back up here. So they had all these questions that they had to figure it out. And so they put 4,000 scientists. Yes, there were 4,000 of them at Bell. They concluded everything they were doing, and they all got onto this project. This could not fail. Well, it was failing. 2 guys were the lead, Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson. I would only hope that many of you know about these 2 gentlemen, because they really guided the audio in those days and woke us all up. What they discovered was not the equipment exactly. It was our ears. Here is a graph of your ears. And you go, I don't hear like that. Yes, you do. Notice up at 100 dB. It's almost flat. That's why kids like to listen to their music real loud, because it's almost flat. They hear all the bass, all the vocals in the middle, all the cymbals. But you go down here where you're listening tonight, maybe 20 or 30 dB. without any kind of tailoring, you just heard what happened. And what these two geniuses figured out that has escaped so many, but not to us audio freakos. The telephone system is 3K wide. Kind of sounds like something you talk into every night, isn't it? But they discovered that 2.5K, in between 2 and 3K, is the magic of human speech articulation. I have a parametric equalizer in this mixer. I'm going to do this again. Now pay attention what's going to happen here. I'm only taking out 2.5. And when I do, what happened? I didn't turn up the bass. I didn't turn the treble. I just took out that so important speech articulation. And so I'm going to bring it back up. And when I do, you'll know the minute that I hit 2.5. The F and the S are so articulate. I take it back out. The F and the S all kind of run together. There's no articulation. Well, that really woke me up. As Paul Clips told me, he said, you need to figure this out in your systems. Okay, so they discovered the problem. What are they going to fix? How are they going to fix that? How are they going to fix it? There was no equalizer. There were no mentions. The word hadn't existed in 1920 for audio. So what they had to do, they had to do it with a high-pass filter. I also put a low-pass in there just for the heck of it, but they didn't use that one on the right. By the right size of a capacitor, straight through, you could carry all the audio you needed, but you wanted to get rid of the bass and stuff, you played with the resistors. That was the main thrust of early equalization, and they finally got the telephone system to work because the telephone system was like that. And the most incredible thing to me, there was no equalization during all those decades, none. And of course, today everything's got EQ in it. It was 1967. Listen up, 1967. I had heard that Longevin, they were a company that built studio mixers and all kinds of audio equipment for that, that they came up with the very first active equalizer. I jumped on a TWA air freight out of St. Louis and off I went to California. I go into Longevin. I told him what I wanted. I had talked to him on the phone before. He said, yeah, we're doing that. We'll take care of it. And let me show you. So we stepped around the corner and look what we found. Wow. The very first active equalizer. To all of you say, oh, hum, big deal. No, it was a major deal. It's like, whoa, I can select a frequency, I can cut, I can boost. Oh my gracious. Why have you been so long coming? Yeah, there was some minor EQ back in the late 40s to 50s when the hi-fi came in, but all it was with that high-pass filter, and you could vary the components, and it wasn't very good, but it was better than nothing. I know, I was there. 18 years old. Yeah, I had one of the first hi-fi systems, and that was all fun. And they also were building mixers and stuff. And in those days, leading up to that, Jimi Hendrix and Joe Walsh and all, this is the mixers that we had. That green one you see, that was it. You see any EQ on that? No, there wasn't any. We did equalization by the type of speakers I would build, the type of drivers I would use, and how to display them. where they would point, we needed more highs over here. So we had long throws, that kind of thing. It was all a mechanical thing. And all we had was that one little line mixer, which that was it. They took me around the corner and they showed me a new mixer they just had come up with. Again, you're going to say, oh, big deal. You got to imagine, you got to put yourself in my place. Nobody had ever seen anything like this. And so I said, okay, I want to buy 2 of those and I want to buy a couple of your equalizers. They, well, now, wait a minute. We got some coming here. We're working with Alltech and it'll be out in about a month. They took me in another room and I thought I was going to die. What was this? And of course, you're all laughing. Oh, we know it. Not in 1967, you didn't. It's like, wow. And in 1968, it hit the market. And of course, I bought all of that. Went back to Marissa, had a really good carpenter, a cabinet builder, and he built that walnut cabinet. We put the 2 mixers. I had 16 channels. The 2 meters on that panel, that's a limiter. And make sure we didn't overdrive the amps. Way over on the back side, you can see a light flash from the camera. That's the equalizer. Can you imagine Heil sound rolling into an arena with that instead of that little 6-channel thing I showed you? It was crazy. But I had many years playing, and I said, you know what? I got to get back to radio. I'd been off the air for 12 years. What happened to my great Art Collins audio? What'd you guys do? I couldn't believe how terrible some of the audio was. It was all bassy and mushy and yeah. And I go, what did you do? Well, what they did was using their new what's a Kenwood? A Yaesu? What is that? I was like, what is all of this stuff? Well, it certainly wasn't made in America. And it sounded terrible. Hi, it's got a matching microphone. The only thing matching is the color. They don't build their microphones, and you've been fooled for years. And it really aggravates me that people don't listen. Those things are terrible. But Heil, they came in the box. I don't give a darn where they came. Because later in life, I started working for ICOM, Kenwood, and Yaesu, and I know what I was talking about then. It's like, oh, my God. Oh, boy. So, 1980, I'm playing around. I said, I got to do something. Something has to happen. I can't stand this terrible audio. And I built the very first equalizer for ham radio for me. But oh boy, people check in. What are you doing? Oh my gosh, that sounds great. Of course it did, because I have a filter at 2.5K. Punch up that articulation. And I have another one at 160, and we can roll off some low end. Well, I wrote an article about this, and I sent it to the league. They called me. They said, this is a revelation. This has not happened. We've been trying to research, and there is no indication of any active equalizer in ham radio. And so the article will become our lead article for July 1982, and it will receive the cover award, which I was very, very blessed. I didn't expect all of this, but it was a DIY article where you could build it, had all the parts, told you how to do it, but I made one mistake. I put my phone number there. People started calling me. They wanted me to build it. Well, I had closed the plant in 1980. When punk rock came in, all my other music groups, they kind of took a dive along the 1978, 90, right in 80 there. I left the industry. Punk rockers came in, see ya. Because you're looking at a guy I live with the Who, live with the Grateful Dead. All of these great guys. Jerry Garcia was a wonderful friend. I've never in my 82 years tasted beer. I've never smoked anything. And for gosh sakes, did their drugs. Here I am running around with the biggest drug addicts in the world. But that's okay. They knew where I was and they never forced anything. No problem. They only wanted what I knew to help their audio. And so I was very blessed, and it was really quite fun in those days. But Pete Townsend always put it good. He said, leave the guy alone when you're passing out your stuff. He doesn't want any. He's got his soldering iron. He makes us sound good, and he can drive the truck. And I did. So those are great days. Well, here comes this equalizer. I had an empty plant for it was somewhere around 5-6 years. So I called back two of my great solder gals, and we started building the very first product for ham radio from Heil Sound. And we built thousands of these things. And it just got me really into what was needed. And so away we went, and things were really happening. But there was a problem with that as to how to adjust it. I hear a lot of guys, they'd have it all backwards or not at all. And wow, you're wasting a tremendous piece here of information. So we started doing websites that would help you. We got about 50 pages just on this subject in our ham radio website. You have to decide what you're doing before you ever turn the radio on. Think about, where am I going? Am I going to do just rag chew stuff? Am I going to get in and do DX and contest? I'm going to do net control. The very first thing you do is set the transmitter bandwidth. That is so important, because usually you want to set it at 2.9 for rag chew, but for DX work, you're going to set that around 2.45. Why is that important? Well, first of all, you're going to go in to your transceiver and you are going to adjust what? Equalization 2.5, right? You're going to open up 2.5. It's the first thing you do with the EQ. Roll off the bass a little. Bingo. You're going to be articulate. You heard what happens. Well, let's talk about that bandwidth stuff. You see, here's a great demonstration. If air in here was RF, we're out to 2.9. We got a little bump at 2.5. It was really nice, okay? But we're going to do contesting. I want all the articulation I can get. And you're going to narrow it up. You're going to narrow 2.4 on one end and about 500 on the other. But you got that 2.4 open. 2.4, 2.5. It's wide open. Where is all of your RF going? It's not going to be wasted out here. It's going to be put right where your brain needs it. That's why bandwidth is so important. And if you're going to do rag chew, fine. Level it out a little bit. But you always, no matter what, you always will have 2.5 elevated a little bit. But that just is something that I never read. It bugged me to death. I said, I got to do something about this. So we started building websites to help you. Then I started going around the country, traveling all over, helping you, doing clubs. I love going, but pandemic stopped that. And I got this idea to Zoom, and this is really great because I got all my toys here. And so you set that bandwidth 500 to 2,500. You're not going to waste it. We don't want any low end. All the bass low end does is muddle up what you're trying to say. And I hear guys all the time, they're so darn bassy. Well, it's really great, isn't it? No, it's not great. It's sick. I can't understand what you're saying. Well, yeah, but Bill said I'll sound good. No, you don't sound good. You sound terrible. We have to have articulation. If you're going to do like neck control, widen it out a little bit, 200 to 2700 with that 2.5 up a little bit. And there's what happens. You look at that. You see, you don't need all that low end. It does you no good. In 1999, I got a letter from Dr. Inouye Communications, and he had a picture of his station. It was at the time his IC 781. That was a great transceiver. The first one had a scope. It was a real CRT, if you remember. In that picture, he had one of my Goldline microphones on one of our booms. We were the first company to bring booms to ham radio. Tens of thousands later, we're still there. I did it for me because whenever you hear me on the air, I am not just sitting here. I'm building, doing stuff, and I needed something to hold the microphone. So we started building booms, and we built a really cool one because the top comes off and you can hide the cable in it. You don't need a bunch of wire ties. It'll work. And Dr. Inouye had one of these. You got to understand, a little kid from Marissa seeing the president, founder of ICOM, with this little box that says, built by those who care in Marissa, Illinois. You got to think about that. That was pretty special. But then I needed to help because I'd hear people with the new ICOMs. He started with the Pro One because he said, we're thinking about a new transceiver line, and I want to put your EQ in. So history remains from the Pro 1 to Pro 2 to Pro 3, all the way through the ICOM line, the great ICOM 7851, the little 705, the really dandy 7610. They all have my equalizer in them. Once in a while, I'll hear people that are not using it. They're in the default mode because they don't know how to set it, because the instructions are pretty bad. All of these instructions, I designed it and I don't understand what they're trying to say. It's really simple. It's very simple. What's the first thing you do? Set the bandwidth, right? I'm going to do some rag chew. What do you do? 100 to 2900. You go up there and you drop out some of that bass, -2, -1 or 2. You play around, listen to yourself in another receiver. Sometimes the monitors will work with headphones. Punch that treble up. That's 2.5 plus 3. And you feather those out, and away we go. What do you do for DX? You know what we do. 500 to 2500. Roll all the bass down into there, and bingo, you got it. And that's how you do it. It's pretty simple. And all of the ICOMs have my equalizer in it. That's really saddens me when I hear guys that, I don't need no darn EQ. Everybody needs equalization. I've proven it to you. Everybody. Don't let anybody tell you you don't, because you'll sound so much better. And that's what it's all about. He also asked me to build a proper microphone. He said, we just buy OEM things, put our name on it, do something right. And so I did. We build a microphone. It only works on ICOM, and oh my gosh, does it work. There's nothing like it, nothing. I call it the ICM. It almost spells ICOM. It doesn't work on a Kenwood, Yaesu, nothing. It works on ICOM. And it's very inexpensive, and I love it. I got in trouble with it because we don't make any money on it. My guy said, you're crazy. We make a few dollars. That's about it. But I want everybody to get rid of the darn microphones that were made by some who knows what. It's matching. The paint is the same color. Are you trying to kid me? Get out of here. A couple of years later, Dr. Hasegawa, his family owns Yesu, stepped into my booth at Dayton. Jack, I want to talk about that stuff. What stuff? The EQ. Well, let's step out of the booth here. I want to do it better. I said, well, the only way to do it better would be with a parametric. Yeah, that'd be good. Not so fast. What'd be the problem? Education. You see, with my little tube band, I've set the frequencies. All you need to do is to feather it out. With a parametric, there are 3 different filters. Each one of them have 3 adjustments. That means you have to find out how to set 9 buttons. There is no anything. And their manuals are terrible. There are a whole bunch of graphs and do that. I invented it, and I don't understand what they're trying to tell you. But we did it, and we did it right. The bottom, you'll see that the top is a 528E. That's a wonderful equalizer. Every broadcast station in the world has one, including all of my vintage gear. The center section, it's got all kinds of compression and de-essing and so on and so on. But the heart of the matter are those 3 filters at the bottom. They have the level, they have the bandwidth, and plus or minus. Boost or cut. There's 3 of them, but you don't know where they are. And it was just really crazy when it first came out. But look at the filter. You're going to set the frequency, then you're going to set the level. You're going to boost it or cut it. And how wide is that audio? Is it going to be a 1 octave or wider? And this is what you come up with. It's very simple. I fuzzed out all the stuff on the left. That just tells you what the name of the filter. Forget it. Here we go. Frequency, level, width, right? 200. We're going to minus that 200 and 2 octaves of bandwidth. That's how wide that filter is going to be. Is it going to reach into the next one or whatever? Just do it. Don't question it. 2 octaves, fine. The next one's 900. Why did I choose 900? All of my audio life, there's something about 600 to 1,000. It's kind of a weird thing that happens with the human hearing. Do this to your ears. And when you talk, you'll hear that real boxy sound, and we have to get rid of that boxy sound. And so we do it by setting it 900 minus 3, 2 octaves of bandwidth. And what do you do with the last one? My gosh, if you don't know, I really have failed. 2.5 plus 8. And that's how you set it. And this is what they should put in their books. It's on my site. There you go. Now there's one other thing. Down at the bottom in red is a whole nother set of parametric EQ. When you turn on the processor, then you have to adjust that. I got news for you. Listen up, and please do not use a compressor or a processor. They only add distortion. Well, Bill said I'm louder. No, you're not. You're distorted. And for somebody that really understands good audio, you are not in the ball game. You don't need it. You have the right microphone. You know how to use the microphone and the right equalization. That is what makes your signal really good. So you want to pay attention to that. You can see here how we move them around. Those 3 filters, you can move them whatever you need there, frequency-wise, plus or minus, and how wide do you want it, all that. But it's just really sad. Kenwood came to me and said, we're going to do a big EQ. So I said, okay, my idea would be six channel EQ. That's all you need. You don't need them. But they come out with 13 bands. Are you out of your stupid mind? Well, they were, because they did it. And what's even worse, look what they put in their manual. raise up all the bass. Don't worry about 2.5 and roll off the top end. What kind of an engineer did this? He was pretty damn stupid. And I really regret that. If you're going to do that, here's what you needed to do. You roll off some low end, keep the 2.5 and roll off the top end. Now we're going somewhere. If you have gear that doesn't have an EQ, you go turn to W2IHY. Notice what I did here. We don't just go from one to the other. I see these smiley faces, makes me sick. You want to creep up on them. We call it feathering. You start at 50, and then you do a little bit of 100. We're coming up to the 0 mark, and then we stay out to 0, and then we start feathering up to 2.5. That's how you adjust equalization. You don't just slam it on there. It's just so sad. But it's all about listening. Everybody needs a scope. You can buy them for next to nothing at Hamfest today. Okay, how you hook it up, Heil? I don't see any kind of SO239. Nope. You go to Antique Electric Supply and you buy a little box. You put 2 coax connectors and you take a piece of RG8 or just a straight piece of wire. We're just passing through. Thank you very much. But on the input, you do a voltage divider of 51K and 680 to ground. At that junction, a 0.04 goes out to the RCA. There's your scope. And you can see when you're flat topping. You can see when you have things all upside down. We talked about using a microphone. I have so many times I hear guys, they're sitting back in their chair and they're talking in their microphone that's 2 feet away. Well, remember this guy? I don't think we want to argue with that. Every time you double the distance, you lose 6 decibel. Will you put that on your hand and not forget it? Doubling your power is 3. You're going to throw 6 away every time you double the distance. Oh, Heil, you're crazy. What you got to do there, just turn up the gain. Well, if you do that, it sounds like you're in a roller rink. But I hear so many guys that are like this with their microphone because no one has ever taken the time to tell them. They lost all of their dynamic range. They lost all of their transient response. You never should be more than 2 inches. It's just one of those things that these things bug me. And it's why it's common science. That's why I'm here, because you need to know about that. But many don't care. And so that's kind of a sad deal. The other thing is a thing we call plosives. What the heck is a plosive? Well, a plosive is when we exit air. Some of us exit a lot more than others. And so we end up with the E-pops. And to get rid of them, there's 2 ways to get rid of them. Number 1, all of our microphones come with a windscreen. And I've heard guys say, oh, Joe, take that stupid wind sock off. It makes you sound bad. If you're using a windscreen and it changes the audio, you don't have the right one. They're not acoustically transparent. We go to great strides to make sure that we have them made just right so they don't injure the audio. We also have them inside the microphone. And what I like to do, if you ever watch a broadcaster, a lot of them don't talk into, because that's where the plosive really come into it. Talk across it. But your MC50s and all your other junk, you can't do that. Joe Walsh and I did so many things together. He said, I want you to make a microphone that it's like my antenna. It has power focus. And of course, these are things that are out there that you never hear about probably, because none of the other microphones do it. Even the RE20s and the great whatever things that are 75 years old, and you think it's the greatest thing on the planet. It's not. Just a lot of people use it for ego and habit. Look at that. That's how I build most all of our microphones. Watch the screen. Watch. Because, you know, well, I can start with this. You know how it goes. What in the world happened to my audio? I didn't change anything. It's the microphone. And why do you see people like this with these dumb things all the time? Because if they get off, it's gone. See you later. Joe said, I don't want to do that. And so, watch. First, listen what happened to the audio. Whoa. I didn't change anything. It's the microphone. But watch the screen. Power focus. I can be 180 degrees off and it's still there. So that makes it really nice. Put it in a boom and you talk across it and you don't have that plosive problem. But the windscreen also helps. One of my great productions was the PR 781. This microphone I built actually for Yaesu, but it's become the podcaster's dream. Saw one on Fox News tonight. All kinds of broadcasters have figured it out, along with our PR40. And I'm very excited about this microphone. I hear so many of them. People have discovered that we really did this right. And I'm proud of this because we needed something like this. The PR40 came along. I really didn't know what was going to happen. Joe wanted a microphone that would get rid of 40 dB of rear rejection. Well, that's not possible. Really? Really? Well, we proved those guys wrong, didn't we? Ooh, I got to watch it. This thing has a lot of low end. The PR40, it's become the darling of so many broadcasters. And we're talking all the major networks, podcasters, and ham radio. I didn't realize it was going to end up here, but it did. Again, my power focus is in play. Watch the screen and listen. It's the only microphone on the planet that has 40 dB of rear. Listen and watch. It's still working. It's still working. But it's 40 dB down. So you can imagine how the broadcasters love it. They don't have to do a bunch of whatever to get rid of all the rear rejection because I did it for them. Let me plug this back in. How did I do that? Along with audio, I'm a real freak of phasing and antennas and all that. I did it with phasing, really. This might be the most important thing. I don't know. The equalization is pretty good, isn't it? Listen to this one. I have a Y cord. Not playing games here. So I can have two microphones. These are PR22s. Paul Rogers asked me to build this for him because he wanted to have good articulation and he didn't have to equalize it. As you noticed, great articulation. I'm not doing anything over here. They're in phase. When you talk in them, the diaphragm goes down, as should be. One little side note. Do you know what happens if you have two signals in phase? Learned that from the audio encyclopedia. How many decibel? 3. When you double your power. See if you can hear 3 dB. This could be $1,000 from 600 watts to 1,200. Listen. Huh. Well, now, wait a minute. You really want to know this? Close your eyes, because I'm going to take away $1,000. You ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. The human being cannot detect 3 dB. Oh, if we were in an echo chamber or whatever, we could, but no. I could be here all night with that subject because it plays an important part, but nobody talks about it. I do. I have a whole hour just on that. I have this magic little plug. It's backwards. Pin 3 is to 2 and 2 is to 3. It's out of phase. The in phase, it goes down. The out of phase, it comes up. Well, now, wait a minute. It sounds just like the other one. Yes, it does. But it's out of phase. What happens when you take 2 signals out of phase? Are you ready? Watch the screen and listen. They cancel. This is going down. This is coming up. How many hours do we have? Oh, it's my favorite. There is so much that it touches with our ham radio. And gosh darn it, I don't read it. What's wrong with these people writing their self-proclaimed genius articles? Tell us something that means something. How does your antenna work? Do you know? There's so much about that. Phasing is just so important. Wes Shum, 1948, brought single sideband to ham radio. It wasn't Art Collins. He was 6 years late to the party. How'd he get rid of the carrier? It was out of phase. How'd he get rid of the other sideband? It's out of phase. Some idiot piles on top of your only nice QSO. You hit the notch filter, he's gone. How's that work? It took his signal out of phase. He's gone. How did Dr. Yagi, how did he come up with the Yagi antenna? I mean, we're talking in days they didn't have great equipment. He had 2 things. He had a bunch of aluminum, but he had a resonant driven element and a field strength meter. And so then he started moving things around. Started in with the different links and spacings and got into the 1/8 wave, quarter waves. And at one point, he could get gain, no batteries needed. Then he goes behind, longer, quarter wave, half wave. He started playing there. It was out of phase. Hello, you just saw what happened. That's how it works. Phase derays. How simple are they? If you've never done one of these, you should. This is an amazing antenna. This was a 75 meter one. I also had a 40 meter on it. What happened here was I went to the telephone, power exchange company, and they gave me those telephone poles. I wanted them 65 foot high. I did aluminum on the top and some fiberglass then, so they didn't cause any problems. They were just fantastic. And here we were. They were 64 foot high, 64 foot apart. We're working in wavelengths, everybody. And so we bring down the lead 126 foot, but look what we did. We put a delay line of 43 foot for 75 meters. Now we had a remote relay. This system is 500 feet from the shack here. And by switching it left or right, I can guide that signal from east to west. And it really plays big time. You can do it with verticals and so on. I used a Meritron. I also had another one I used, DX Engineering switching, but I don't like rotary switches. I hate them. So what I do, I go to Antique Electric Supply and bought some Les Paul guitar switches. And that's how I switch everything. There's 35 relays behind me. None of these little things you buy and you twist it. And no, they're all done with really good relays, all the different phasing. The colored ones are all the different, some different transceivers and so on. You know, you could do it with that, but come on. Oh gosh, it's just so much fun. But let's talk about the height. Higher's not always better. I read an article. Pay attention here. This is very important. A publication from Art Collins stated most transmitting antennas of resonant dimensions elevated at a quarter wave above the ground are as close to 100% efficiency as possible. You see, your antenna has two rays. You know about the one, you see it, but there's a reflected ray. And if you could get those two together, aha. Well, I took that to heart. And in 1976, when I came back on the air, 6 meters is a ghost land. It's a contest band. What's your grid square at? That's all they want. They want your grid square. They don't want to talk to you. They don't care about you. So, okay. Took all my 6 meter stuff down. Oh, the love of 6 I had for years. I got an extra class license and playing around on 40 meters, I had a group of guys. And every night I'd come on the air with a reference antenna at 20 feet. So we could all, I got California, New Orleans, Florida, and one of the guys at the comm center at Collins. And they'd see what the atmosphere was doing. One night it came on and it was 5 feet. Next night it came out, it was at 40 feet. Next night, 50. You know what? None of those were really, you would think that 50 would have done it. No, it didn't. So then I did what Art wanted us to do. I went a quarter wave, 33 feet, boom. And then we did it another night and took it to 66 foot. And it really, really plays because we're getting those two together. There's a lot of conjecture about what is the best antenna. Well, there is no argument. There's nothing like a resonant dipole for a great simple antenna. Yeah, you can put some traps in it and do 40 and 75 pretty good. But there's nothing like a resonant dipole. I like to use MIT's design of a coaxial dipole. There's no question, this is it. This thing covers entire 75 meter phone band. I don't have tuners. I don't like tuners. I don't think we need tuners. They just chew up a lot of your RF. If you have a tuner and you rely on it, you better think about it. This is an incredible antenna. And that's all I use. I love it. And I hear these guys with the double bazooka. What is it? Who did that? I want to know who put that nomenclature. That's stupid kid stuff. It's a coaxial dipole designed by MIT at the invitation of our government in 1938. They wanted an antenna that would be great for radar, no tuners, nothing, and cover the whole band. That is what MIT's coaxial dipole is. So if you want to build one, you look up that. Go on my website, it's there. But there's just all kinds of things. We can be here all night. I've done, when I was on Ham Nation, I was on Ham Nation 10 years. We did all kinds of great stuff to try to let people that were just getting into ham radio know $2.45. It worked great. I did the yo-yo antennas. They work great. Then you get into the things of what do? Never, ever, ever use a pulley. Oh, well, I got marine pulley. I don't care what you have. It can load up with ice and snow and you're dead. You use carabiners, locking stainless steel, 6-inch carabiners. It will never lock up. What you see in the top right, that's what I do for my coaxial dipoles. Take a piece of fiberglass and do it. And I'm sure you all know about what we can do with slopers and things like that. Some of the best wire that I use comes from MFJ. It's 7 strands of steel, copper plated, and it is so strong, and it's just wonderful. I love it. Where I'm at in this studio, I don't have room. But my neighbor across the street, her husband, who's deceased now, was a ham, and she loans me her 70-foot tree, and the 70-foot tree behind me at my other neighbor who works for Ameren, and you can't even see it. But man, does that thing play. Oh, yeah. Okay, you guys with the balance line, a twin lead, and the window line. No. Every time the weather comes, you're off the air. Here's how you do it, and it really works. You use 2 pieces of coax. You bring out the centers, that's your antenna connection, but you want to solder together the 2 shields. Then down at the bottom in the shack, you do it again. And you run that into a 4-to-1 balun. Wow, let it snow, let it rain, who cares? So there's just all kinds of things. There's a thing in an Army manual. If you're out in the field and you don't have any way to hang an antenna, drive a nail in a tree. No, you're not going to work DX, but to try to summon somebody, you can do it. We tried this, and it works. A guy 10 miles away could hear me. No, I went to 40 over 9. And one of my favorites, Jim, AC0KN, had a great idea for an attic antenna. This is what he did. From 2 meters to 80 meters. And of course, all cut the frequency where he needed it. And here it is up in the attic. Isn't that cool? And for all of you doom and gloomers, always somebody, it won't work, Heil. Well, it does work. Check this out. I checked all of them, but I just copied 40 meters. And it's just very, very flat. The only ones that suffered was 6 and 2 meters, but he only wanted it for 2 repeaters. And we cut that just for that repeater. Everybody was happy. And that's how it works. I mean, there's just so much. I could spend an hour on SWR. I hate it when you just, oh my God, my SWR. Oh my God, it's 2-to-1. I got to get off the air. Are you out of your mind? Come on. When I first got into this business in 56, we didn't have any kind of meters. We just did it. If you're so inclined that you got to have it flat, put your darn dummy load on a tower and you'll have flat. Oh, God, I know I'm terrible. Then we can get into balance. We're not talking about a balum. Another thing that Bob Heil goes straight through the ground when I hear the, my balum is working fine. No, you don't have a balum. Balanced to unbalanced. That's where the word balun comes from. Are we not reading? Do they not tell us anymore? I don't know. I give up. When I first started, Larry Burroughs, K0DGE, about 2 days into my 6-meter expose and so on, he was one of the very first single sideband stations on 6 meters in St. Louis. Engineer at CBS. And I started working him. He was really thrilled because nobody would come back to him because they couldn't understand him. I just happened to hit the BFO button one night, and there he was. We became great friends. He taught me so much. And I took a piece of coax up to him because I was having a hard time soldering, through the little holes like the AWR manual tells you. And he said, Heil, you can't do that because you can't guarantee me those are all soldered. I said, well, that's what the handbook says. I don't care what the handbook says. This is how you do it. The first thing you do is you get this all set up and do the center. But then before you start any of this, you put that in a vise and you roll about a 1/2 inch of solder around it. It's going to get really hot. You come back in a half hour. It'll be cool. Then you cut off about 3/8 of an inch. You roll that down and you can absolutely guarantee Every little shield is soldered. Well, people always made fun of me because, oh, you didn't do it right. Well, I got news for you. I did it right. So I would tape them up until 2016. I visited with Tim Duffy, the great $1 million plus contest station, DX Engineering. And I got in, and here's 11 stations he's built. They're all identical. Beautiful station. I look over in the corner, and here's this great big clump of coax. I look closer, and they're all done like that. I'm going, oh no. I go over and shake his hand, visit. Thank you. What'd I do? And I told him the story. He said, oh no, kid. No, that's how you do coax connectors if you're going to solder them. I don't know. There's just so much more. I have a lot of people ask me, how do I use one microphone on everything, and that's how the big story. But I make a patch panel like the old telephone operators, and they're all nylon jacks. We cannot tie anything together in their grounds or anything, and that works great for all of my gear. We went through the pine board. There's another hour program of building things. That was really fun. And we just do these things because we need to do them. But I also despise the microphone wire. It's all junk. You look at your Kenwood Yaesu ICOM, it's junk. It's 24, 26 gauge, and it's all inside one shield. Well, now, wait a minute. You have AC for the microphone. You have DC for the push to talk, and you're going to put them together in a shield? No darn wonder you got RFI. And so I said, I'm going to fix it, and I did. Tens of thousands of feet later, look at that. Number one, it's a pair of 18 gauge mic wire, because most all of my mics I use is balanced. And all of your transceivers have a hidden balance, but the manufacturers don't want you to know it. We do. All of our cables are balanced. But look at that blue and red. It's on the outside of a 100% shield. It really means a lot. But so much of that's in my handbook. If you don't have this, the dealers have it, or call our factory and I'll autograph it for you. Yeah. But I'm very blessed in that recently I was given a PhD from Missouri University in music and electronics. You have to think about it. This is a kid that barely made it through high school. But they said, you know what, Heil, it took you 50 years to get here. And then the biggie. Heil Sound's the only manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They know all the artists are there. But one day the curator said, you know what, none of these guys would be there if it wasn't for those that gave them the right sound systems. And they found out who the number one was, and I'm very blessed. So that's kind of a nutshell. And there's so much more. I'm coming back 3 and 4 times to clubs. We'll pick out a subject and do that. And you're sure welcome to do that. I just love sharing so much of this with you because it made my life, and it still goes on. I bet you have some questions. Don't be shy. You got to have something.
Okay, in the room, you got to unmute yourselves, and anybody else with a question, feel free to unmute at this point.
I have a question, Richie.
Go ahead, Richie.
So, Dr. Heil, 2 things. First, so you sold your company, but you were the creative genius behind your company, and it still bears your name. How do you ensure that there's still the creativity?
Let me stop that rumor right now.
Okay.
First of all, I am not retired. I don't know where you guys get that. My wife retired. Oh no, do I look like I'm retired? No. and our son, who is a PhD, taught for about 10 years in New York University. Obama pulled his grants. He's a classically trained musician, plays lots of guitars. He knows all the new bands, which some of them I don't know. But he and Stephen, that's been with me for 26 years, they're the two that's guided it. And I wanted to make sure that if anything happened to me or Sarah, Ash would take care of it. And he's a genius kid. So no, it's not going anywhere. It's still in the family and it always will be.
All right, that's interesting, because if you do a quick blurb, it says that it was bought out by a company, but that's good to hear, because there's tremendous creativity there. The other thing, when you do noise cancellation, like in earphones, what is it exactly the process? Because if you hit the button to do the noise cancellation, to me, the audio is exactly the same, but obviously now it's clear, whereas before there was all of this other extraneous noise. So what exactly is the noise cancellation process?
Those two speakers are out of phase, and it cancels a lot of the top end stuff. And that's what we're wanting to do with it. And that works great. It's all about cancellation, two signals out of phase. You heard the demonstration with the microphones, right?
Right.
There you go. That's your answer. We do that to headphones. And Heil Sound is the only manufacturer on the planet that does this. First of all, this is an amazing headset. It's become the headset for the big DXers and contesters. I did everything they wanted. I spent 2 years working. I was even out on some system with them. They wanted a balance control. So if you're left or right, they wanted very soft ear pads, but the speakers are way down inside here. So if you have hearing aids or so on, it won't feed back. Every one of our headsets, this always bugs me. I see, Heil headset hurts my ears. You didn't read the instructions. Every one of them has a steel band in here. So you get a pinhead like me, fine. But don't worry, you're not going to break it. Bend it, and you can make it whatever you want. Secondly, they wanted a boom. It went left or right. Interchangeable. We have broadcast elements, DX elements. The HC7 is my favorite. It's just really great. And then I put a jack for the monitors. So if you have a monitor or you're a field day and you want people to listen, you don't need a bunch of Y cords. You plug it in right here. You ready for this? The only headset manufacturer in the world that has phase reversal. And you're going to say, what's that do? You ask the DXpeditions and the contesters. You hear a little signal, a little weak, and he's way back here. You reverse that phase, and he comes up here. You can move signals around in your head by reversing the phase. It is a phenomenon that if you don't have a Pro 7 or any of our headsets, you're missing it. I'm telling you, do it. Get it. You'll wonder why it took you so long to get with the program. And I'm just so thrilled. But I listen to you. I build things. I've told you several things about some of the products we built because people suggested things to me, and I'm still doing that. Far from retired. So I hope that answers that for you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
George, you have a question? Go ahead, George, on the phone. George, on the phone, you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, George, KD2FIU, thank you. Hi, Bob. And yes, I do recall Frampton and 1969, 1970 at the Fillmore East. That's one of the questions I want to ask if you were there. And another thing is I started out with long lines in 1971, and the 400 to 4K audio response was drilled in our head with the 2.5 maximum. But question was, were you ever at the Fillmore East?
Mm-hmm. Several times in different bands. Yeah, we did a lot of things through there. Now that was a mecca, wasn't it? Yeah, so many things that we did in those days. But the Fillmore
Yep,
was
yep. Yes, Bob, they were the house band at the time, Frampton, and there were so many groups and everything and all of that. And thank you for coming back with it.
Yeah.
This is George.
Okay, George. Yeah, Santana was there quite often. The Dead played there a little bit, but yep, that was a great venue, and it all went away.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Let's come back and do more.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Raymond, you're next, and then Rich.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation tonight. Got a question. You kind of came down hard on audio compression and limiting.
Absolutely.
Don't want to change mind, but there's the compression used in top 40 radio stations that I think
Different
makes
deal.
cool.
Whole different deal. We're dealing with 3K wide. It's a whole different compression system for broadcast audio and television. Whole different deal. I'm talking about this little, sometimes 2.5 and 2. No, you don't need it.
Of course, the bandwidth is different, yes.
Yes.
But there's the classical radio station compression. Compression can be clean if it's set up correctly. I'll give you an example.
That's the problem. The compressors in the transceivers are not good, and you're better off not to use it. But hey, if you choose to use it, it's America. Have fun with it.
Well, when I'm into two-way radio, LMR, UHF, I want to experiment with audio processing because it gives more punch per watt. Instead of, like, your voice during this whole presentation has been quite low. Another speaker comes in and blasts my ears out. So there's a lot of dynamic range in this Zoom call, which is awesome. I like dynamic range.
Yeah.
But if this was being transmitted on FM, it would have been very hard to hear you above the noise floor.
Why didn't you tell me to raise the gain, by the way?
Well,
if I asked in the beginning.
I don't know. It sounded good on my end. It sounded good.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong. Your audio is excellent. But the dynamic range, when another speaker comes in and blows my ears out, that's a sign that compression would have possibly helped. If your average audio level had been higher, you would have been a better match to the other callers. Again,
I probably should have raised it up. Nobody told me it was low. I have all kinds of things to do that.
No, it was good. George in the room, I keep messaging who's at the computer to unmute the room. That's why I haven't recognized you. You're still muted in the room. So I was going to call on Rich while you take care of that. Rich.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob, I am thrilled to see you here. I got my novice ticket in 1970. And like a lot of amateurs, let things drop for a whole bunch of time. But you and Ham Nation single-handedly got me back in here.
All right.
So got my extra, and it's all because of you. So thank you very much, George. Thank you very much, Bob.
I hear that a lot. Ham Nation had a great impact on us. I didn't realize Leo Laporte and I put that together, and I didn't know where it was going, but it ended up being a very major thoroughfare for a lot of people, and many that got their license, Leo being one of them. But I'm really thrilled that somebody can take all the information and make their lives better.
Okay, George in the room, you're unmuted now. Go ahead.
Terrific. Thank you, Gary. Bob, involving AM broadcasting and even single sideband, a couple of things come to mind. One of which is our speech in waveforms is not necessarily symmetrical. if we have a waveform that has a lot of second harmonic in it, it's an asymmetrical waveform. If we do even clipping, it becomes symmetrical, it's forced, it sounds hollow, and it sounds off. But we've learned as an ex-broadcast engineer, that we can increase our volume levels by allowing audio levels to exceed 100% modulation in the positive direction and never in the negative. And there's a lot of AM audio processing equipment that does that. Have you used any of it? Is there any of it that's appropriate for ham radio?
Yeah, well, when I'm talking about compression, I'm not talking about your 520s and your ICOMs and all that. Those processors suck. They're terrible. But what I use, we've got a couple of things. I use the 528E. That's got a really, I mean, how many radio stations have 528Es? And there's the Optimod really works great. And that's over on that console. I didn't turn that camera on. I should have done that for you. But all of my old stuff is over there, and that's what I use for that. But that's a different subject. I'm talking about go down to DX engineering via transceiver. I'm talking about that stuff on single sideband.
Yeah. I guess what my experience is with the old CBS Lab series of Audimax, Volumax, and that series of compressors that worked with a photocell and a photocell and a little light bulb that would drive it, and then they had a proprietary compression algorithm in it. And they would look for positive peaks and accentuate them, and never let the negative peaks cut their carrier off. Because when you're modulating in the negative direction at 0, you can't go any lower. There's just nothing left. But if you're modulating 100% in your carrier direction, you can continue. The sky's the limit there, but 200% modulation not allowed by the FCC on the broadcast. Sure works once on the ham bands.
Sure. Whole different ballgame with AM, that's for sure.
I'm including sideband as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions in the room? I have one hand raised remotely.
Anybody here besides me?
Okay, let me call on iPhone user. iPhone, go ahead. And please identify yourself.
This is John NY2JJ. Dr. Heil, thank you for all you've put into the various industries. I'm wondering where nowadays we might be likely to hear you on the air.
Every morning, 3885 AM. We're there for about an hour and a half. A whole bunch of us from Kansas through sometimes Indiana, depends on what's going on. But I spend most of my time on AM, and it's rewarding to me. I love it. But at night, I might be anywhere, but I usually do a lot of AM work at night. There's all kinds of net stuff like that, but I don't have a place. I don't really. I have a lot of guys that'll email me and tell me to meet them on 40 meters or whatever. We do that, no problem. But I don't have a one place that I hang out. I've tried that in the past, but it ends up with 30, 40 people all piling in, and I don't think that's fair. So, it chews up a lot of the band, so I don't do that. It just one-to-one. You want to work me? Well, send me an email. We'll meet up. Okay.
Thank you.
I had one question. I was just wondering, because you had reflected about your time in the music industry, and did you ever work with my buddy Ron Delsner?
I don't think that name's familiar, but gosh, there were so many. What did Ron do?
He was a promoter. He's the creator, really, of what's now called Live Nation.
Oh, okay. No, I don't remember. Irv Azoff is a really great friend. He came from this area took REO, Speedwagon, and Michael McDonald, which were customers of mine when they were in high school. They weren't even known by the REO then, Danny Fogelberg. They were all Midwest guys that we took out to the coast, and you know what happened there. Good stuff.
Yeah. No, Ron was mostly on like the Northeast, and he later teamed up with Slater. So it was Delaware Slater Enterprises, and they pretty much, if you wanted to play anywhere in the Northeast, you had to know them.
Mhm. Got it. Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you for your presentation. It's excellent. David, 82 BTM. Oftentimes I'm supporting an event here on Long Island, like the MS Walk or the ACS Walk, and I'm shadowing a management member of the team, and I also have to listen to net control. Which one of your headsets would you recommend where I could have one ear open and the other one listening to net control?
It's you know, it's a personal thing. I just love the Pro 7. It's just everything you want. But then there are others. We have a lighter if you're going to use it with a handy talkie or stuff. Why there's BM17 or even the original one we did back in 84, 85, the BM10, real lightweight stuff. So just look on the website. There's a lot of them there, and that you find the right thing that would work for you.
Thank you.
Sure. You can always email me and we'll get on Zoom or whatever and help you too.
Thank you so much. Anybody else have any more questions? And I don't see any more, but thank you. This is one of the best ham radio talks I've ever listened to. I really think our group thanks it. Thank you so much.
Question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Bob, George again from Long Lines. Did you have anything to do with Janis Joplin's "Take Another Little Piece of My Heart"?
Yeah, that was a goodie. I had not. I'd done the James Gang and kind of stuck my toes into that market, and the promoter called from Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis and said, we need to get you up here because we got a group coming in. They didn't tell me. That group was Jimi Hendrix, and Janis opened with them. And in those days, we mixed right in front of the stage. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into when Jimmy was about maybe 6 or 8 feet in front of me on the stage. And he put lighter fluid on his guitar and lit it. I'm looking for the exits because I didn't know. You got to understand that I spent most of my early days doing that. I didn't listen. I hardly knew the Beatles were in 1965 or so when they came out. I wasn't listening. I'm listening to George Wright, Jesse Crawford, Len Larson, all these great theater organists that taught me so much. And all of a sudden, I'm thrust into seeing this in front of my eyes. I woke up pretty fast, and we really got with the program. The funnest years was when I did The Dead. If you know that story, it's a piece of history. I got a call from the Fox again, and he said, "Hey, you have those big speakers that we gave you?" I do. Do they work? Yeah. Why? He said, "Well, we have this group that's come in here today. It was 3:00 in the afternoon, and their PA didn't make it. Here's the story. Owsley, who was the sound man for the Dead, invented LSD, by the way. He was on probation. He wasn't to be out of the state of California, but they had a Hell's Angels funeral they needed to do in New Jersey. So they thought, we'll do New Orleans and St. Louis and Ohio. They'll never know. We'll sneak in there and then we'll go out and do the funeral. Well, they did the show at the warehouse, and the DEA and the FBI heard about it. That he was out of the state of California, so they went, sat in the back row. When that concert was over, Garcia and the band, no cell phones. Hey, Owsley, we'll see you at the Fox at 3:00. Okay. He loaded the gear, and when he padlocked the truck, the DEA and padlocked him. Off they went back to California. So when the band got on the stage at 3:00 the next day, where's our stuff? Where's Owsley? They call back to the office in San Rafael, and it's like, he's in jail. And so the stage manager handed the phone to Jerry, and I told him what I had. I had these great Olsen bins, a lot of JBL horns and all that kind of good stuff. And I can be there in an hour and a half. Well, get it up here. Okay. And so we did. And I have to tell you that I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I loved it. And I'm glad I did, because it was the beginning of a whole different career for me. It was something that you couldn't write the book. You couldn't say, well, this is what I'm going to do. None of that. It just happened. And so much of my life is like that. It just came like this. But one of my great, great friends out of that was Jerry. And after that little tour and things, we went on with the rest of the tour. Oh, there's one other little thing. My store, here's a slide of that. You can see a picture of one of the PA, Ye Old Music Shop. That was on all of our equipment. And that I was in the music retail. That's how I got into all this. And Jerry called back the next day. They were in Ohio. And he said, hey, Heil, what's all this ye old music? We have a tough time saying all that. We're just going to call you Heil Sound. Can we write that on the check? History is fact. Jerry Garcia named Heil Sound. And then you go, well, it was your company. No, my company was Ye Old Music Shop. And so and he would come 3 or 4 times. He would fly from California to Marissa. That was quite a little chore. I actually bought a limousine that I could cart people back and forth 50 some miles from the airport, because everybody was coming. They were coming from England. They were coming from Canada. They were coming from all over because they heard about this dude that could help them. And I did. But we were talking about the wall of sound. And I gave him some of my ideas that I thought would work, some I didn't. And right after that, I got this call. And the guy says, you the guy that's got that big PA, right? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, we need you tomorrow night in Boston. I said, not possible. What do you mean not possible? Well, we were out with Chaka Khan in Chicago because she was using one of my talk boxes. It was a premiere piece of one of her hits. And I said, I can't do that. He said, well, find somebody. I need you. And he just really was very forceful. And I said, who are you? He said, we're the Who. I said, what? You're the Who. I'm going, wake up, Heil. I told you I didn't know some of these people. And so I said, well, we can't get there because we were one of the first companies that used semi trucks and buses. I bought a bus so we could sleep 11 people in it and all that, and a 40-foot semi. I said, we can't drive from Chicago to Boston. Well, he said, you go out to the airport and you rent a Tiger Air Freight. And you're paying, right? And so we drove all of this up we made Boston and saved their tour because they were in big trouble. They'd come over here with all new music. They did Saratoga racetrack, and the public or the media was just eating them up. I wish I would have saved the paper. It said, "Who is dead?" And they were ready to go back. But one of the guys that I knew well was there. He said, "I think I got something that could help you." So in that Tiger Air Freight, off we went, and we saved their tour. I was with them 6 years and became really good friends with Pete because Pete was very technical. And of course, I was there in 73. He called me, said, "Come over. I want to talk to you." That's when I took these pictures. He said, "Quad sound is big right now." I said, "Yes." He said, "Build me a mixer that we can move Roger's voice around the hall. Can you do that?" No, is not in my vocabulary. We were just finishing building a console with our sister company in England, and it was the first quadraphonic mixer built. I think maybe the only one. And there were Pink Floyd and several others used it, but just absolutely wonderful times in my life with Pete. We're still great friends, and we still do a lot of things. Yeah, I look like them too. I didn't have to do what they did, but I had to look like them. There's a little bitty piece of that history. But yeah, there's so much going on in those days, and I'm blessed for it. Well, if we got all of it done, I think maybe I'll go in and see what I can do about getting something to eat. What about you guys?
Great. Well, Bob, thank you so much. And kudos to you. It was an excellent presentation. And I think I'm speaking for everyone when you say we all enjoyed it. And, we're going to be doing stuff with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Let's do it again. We'll pick out something and do it. Okay?
Have a good one.
Yeah. Just remember, I'm always there for you. Email me. We'll get up and talk about it. Bye-bye for now.
Okay.